RFQ request for quote, pretty easy to explain. A customer is coming to you and ask you to provide an offer for some kind of service or some kind of products. And the main issue why this is getting more and more important, one is the impact we see from China. So you have these two streams. Either you need to invest a lot of people or you need to do automation to really get the most out of the 1 or 2 weeks of this RFQ phase. So you just put in your requirements, all these agents start running, and after 2 minutes, 5 minutes, you already get a result. This will be, I believe, a total game changer.
All right, Tobias, welcome to the show again.
Thank you for having me, Yusuf.
For everybody who doesn't know who Tobias is, can you give us like a 1 or 2 sentence introduction? Who are you in the first place and what are you doing?
Okay, in the first place, I'm engineer by heart, and I have more than 20 years of experience in engineering. Was responsible for different roles in the past, and also answered a lot of RFQs in the past. So I think that's also the reason why I'm here today to have or to share some of the insights in this process.
Excellent. Really cool. Yeah, I feel like everybody's overwhelmed with all these acronyms. And now we have the acronym of RFQ. So what does RFQ actually stand for? What does it mean? And why this is actually a problem in the industry nowadays?
Yeah, so RFQ request for quote, pretty easy to explain. A customer or potential customer is coming to you and ask you to provide an offer for some kind of service or some kind of products. And the main issue why this is getting more and more important for 2 reasons. So one is the impact we see from China, so the typical China speed, that we need to answer these RFQs much quicker as we had to do in the past. And the second thing is that especially if the industry or the economy is not developing that well, you do just less sales over the year. And that means you also are very often you get less RFQs over the year. And that means you need to have a higher win rate in these RFQs. And that's exactly what we want to discuss so today, how you can achieve to increase these win rates, especially if you focus on, or if your typical RFQ has a lot of technical involvement. So means you need to develop CAD designs already during the RFQ or doing simulations during this RFQ process.
I see, that makes sense. I'm wondering, so at the end of the day, we are trying to sell more ultimately, right? Because you're an expert, Tobias. Walk me through the process end to end. Like, where do we begin with when it comes to RFQ, and how can we optimize all these different steps and maybe friction points in the RFQ process?
Yeah. So again, just talking about the RFQs, which are involved with a lot of technical interactions. I know that there are RFQs for really commodity products or off-the-shelf products where just someone asks for a price and you can immediately send out the offer and then you get a feedback. So I'm talking about really complex RFQs, especially if we see, for example, with tier ones. And the first thing what they receive is usually a huge RFQ document. I saw RFQ documents longer than 100 pages. And that's also the first thing you need to analyze all the specs in this RFQ document. And then usually you start in the next step and think about, okay, what is the right design for it? It could be that you already have products in your shelf and you need to modify them, or you need to create a whole new design. And then there's the next phase is the validation phase. So you need to understand, okay, does your design fulfill all the specs? And if yes, then it's good. But what's happening very often in this process is already that you can't fully develop for sure your design and make it fully feasible and fulfill all the requirements. So you need to get to a very good level so that you can do some estimations to calculate the price. So as maybe some explanation, for example, you created a CAD design do a simulation, and then you see, okay, I need to add, for example, maybe 20 more grams of plastic, and then I will achieve all the specs, and then you have your full weight of the part, you can calculate your price, and then you can send out the offer. So to sum it up, first one, analyzing the specification, then create a design, doing the validation, and at the end, calculate the cost and send out the offer.
If we want to compare the traditional approach, whatever traditional means in that sense, Tobias, versus the new approach, how is RFQ currently being done in the industry, and where is the bottleneck in most of the cases? Is it more like a process issue or more like a tooling issue, or maybe both?
I would bring it in a third perspective on this topic. So I worked also in sales in the past, and if someone from sales is looking in the CRM system, there's one reason which is always as the lost reason, and it's saying, okay, we have been too expensive, and I believe that's not the truth. Sales is all about trust. So you never fulfill all the specifications directly at the beginning, at least if you're in complex technical RFQs. So you need to create enough trust with your prospect or potential customer that you can fulfill all the specifications. And then for sure, on top, also, you need to have a really good pricing. And if you consider these two things, it means you need to have or create a high mature product in this 1 or 2 weeks of RFQ phase. And this comes back now to your question. For sure, what do I need? I need some kind of automation, or I need a really huge team. And I also heard this in the past that some of the tier ones, they have hundreds of engineers sitting in India, for example, and just waiting for an RFQ. And then they start to run. They work for 10 hours, 20 hours to get this done as soon as possible or as quick as possible. And to create all these designs, doing the validation, and really bring the offer to really high quality. So you have these two streams. Either you need to invest a lot of people, or you need to do automation to really get the most out of the 1 or 2 weeks of this RFQ phase. And that's a little bit traditional versus this new world. In the past, you had a lot of time. It was not relevant to have this high mature quality RFQ answers. And today, you need to almost do all the development already in the RFQ phase.
What parts of the process can theoretically but also practically be automated? And where does process automation fall into place here when we talk about RFQ?
Yeah, so I mean, it's in general typical automation answer. First, you need to understand in your process, and it doesn't matter if this is an RFQ or a standard development process, you need to understand where are the areas in this process which are really time consuming, but always following exactly the same steps. This is usually the part where you should start to automate. So what I see very often is that CAD design is very often very individual. So it's not that easy to automate it. Sometimes it's possible, but not always. But especially if you think about simulation, there are always clear rules how to pre-process the system, how to run the simulation, how to post-process it. So what I see with our customers is that there is the highest potential to start. And it's also very good to do this for them RFQ stuff, because later on in the series development, this automation need to be 100% perfect. But during the RFQ process, we already learned, okay, I need to deliver a high quality, but you don't need to deliver a 100% quality. So very often in this kind of development phases, it's okay if the mesh quality is not perfect, but it's on a pretty good level. And that's the reason why I see there the biggest impact of automation in the RFQ process.
What about the parameters such as speed, accuracy, and risk reduction? How do they come into play here when we talk about automation for RFQ?
Yeah, so I think that's also again, a little bit old world versus new world. So what I've seen in the past is that, it was not necessary to have this pretty good pricing because price pressure, it was high, but it was not that high as it is today. So what happened? Usually you developed a design, did a simulation, maybe you had time for 2 or 3 iterations, and then you had an understanding, okay, yeah, need to add XY grams of material, for example, as I explained already. And based on that, you put together your quote. But it could always happen that this was not enough additional material, or that you thought you need much more material, as it happened then later on. And what this means is that it adds a lot of risk to your quote. So it adds risk to your quote that you're too expensive, or what's even worse, it adds risk to your quote and you offer something cheaper as you can then deliver it later, which always leads to a lot of discussion, or in the worst case, it means a loss for the company. And with the price pressure today, and everybody has maybe to give also higher discounts or give parts away for the same price as they did in the past, but with a lower volume. So margins just getting reduced per part. And all these things, you need to be very aware on what kind or on what costs you can offer a part. And therefore, automation, in my eyes, is really key in the RFQ process, because you need to deliver this maturity.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the theory right now, Tobias. I would like to understand maybe 1 or 2 use cases that you've personally worked on in the past, where process automation, in this case Synera, was extremely valuable for the RFQ process.
Yeah. So all what I told you in the last minutes, it's based on one experience I had myself 5 years ago. So I was leading a material department, and we partnered up with automotive tier 1 and have been responsible for developing the products, but also especially in the RFQ phase, because we had much more engineering expertise in this kind of area where they sold the products. And that was exactly the case, that we never made it, or usually it needed 3 months to develop some kind of products really to fulfill all the specifications. And my idea back in the days was really to automate it. And also the same way we focused here first on the simulation, and then we try to bring in the CAD design with already parameterized CAD models. We could connect them to our automation to automatically run complete loops, for example, over the weekend. So sometimes we had a chance to iterate or do 20, 30 iterations versus 3 iterations in a manual approach. And this was really then the game changer to deliver products or to deliver results at the end of the quote to the prospect. And comparing again how it was before that. So we came to the customer, showed them a picture of the simulation and told them, yeah, we know we are not good yet, but we are confident that we can achieve it. Versus today, we came there, we had a ready engineered product, we had nice pictures because we had time, we had a nice calculation because we had enough time to do all the calculation. We could hand them over already CAD designs, we could hand them over simulation designs they could directly use in their systems then again. And this just created so much trust that the win rate really increased.
Who is usually initiating this kind of automation process in let's say a small and medium-sized enterprise, but also bigger corporations? Because I think the idea of automation is not really new, right, Tobias? But there has to be someone who initiates this. So who is that actually in a company?
Joseph, this is a pretty hard question. So I hope for all the companies that they have some engineers in their roles, they are really love about automation and really start to think a little bit outside of the box. What could be changed? Where we could profit from, just new processes. So this is always a good starting point. But to be honest, I think we need to see a switch there because at least in Germany, you read every day in the newspapers some bad news, especially about the tier ones, that they need to lay off people, that they need to lay off engineers. So in my eyes, this should be really on the agenda also of the C-level to define strategies on how you could automate, especially in the RFQ phase, because they need to win more deals this year.
Yeah, I'm wondering, how do you make people, maybe some of the people are not even problem aware that you could potentially automate something. So how do you actually, as Synera, as an entity, create this kind of awareness in the industry right now? Because I think your product is excellent, right? I mean, the whole process automation topic makes a ton of sense. Probably I'm biased here, but how do you create that awareness that automation is the way to go? And then obviously the next step would be like process automation, and we have AI agents as the next step. But how do you create awareness in the engineers that this thing is actually the next step, the logical next step to go?
Yeah, so we usually grow with our already existing customers. So this is always a pretty good start because then if you already have a nice use case, you can also show to new customers or prospects. This helps a lot because then they see, okay, even if this is a different product, it's exactly the same process, and this really helps. So it's a lot about education, to go out, to go on conferences and just showcase what other companies did with Synera. This is usually our way forward. And so it's not very known in the market that you can automate a lot because maybe there was also not enough pressure in the past, but we also see a huge switch there. So we're getting more and more requests every day from especially tier ones exactly asking, can Synera help us to automate more in the RFQ process?
Yeah. What do you see, Tobias, as some of the most common objections when you talk about automation in general, but especially RFQ automation? What are people hesitant about commonly?
I think there are several objections. So first of all, sometimes automation feels like a black box. This depends a little bit. For sure, if you can't read the code, it feels like a black box. But if you're the one creating this code and responsible for maintaining the code, then for sure it's not a black box for you. Nevertheless, even if this is a black box, it comes again to trust, right? People need to start to change, to try it out, to gain trust, and then use it in a daily base. And this already had the second thing in it, the change. So this is also an objection. No one really likes to change. Same for myself. Even if very often it happens that I look back and I'm thinking, okay, why I discussed this 4 weeks ago? This is just awesome. But change, you need to have some kind of change management. And how do we overcome this objection is, again, we try to support here. It's not like that, especially in Synera, we are not selling a license and then say, okay, see you 1 year later when we talk about renewing the license. It's like that we're supporting directly new customers from the beginning. And we do it also with our existing customers. So there are always new ideas they want to achieve, and we support them and tell them or let them know the best way how to achieve these things.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a very good thing, Tobias, which is disruption or never changing running system. So how can you embed these automations, or especially Synera as a tool, into existing tool chains? So is it something complicated? Is it something very easy to do? So how do you see that?
Yeah, so in my eyes, this is one of the sweet spots of Synera. if it comes down to engineers, the most of the engineers, they can write scripts within the tools, but they're facing challenging to really connect these different engineering tools. And that's also the reason why Synera focused on connecting exactly all these engineering tools. So how does it work in Synera? You just open our marketplace, which is similar to an Apple App Store. And then you download the connector to these tools. And then if you know how to use, for example, a CAD system like CATIA or a preprocessor like ANSA, then these nodes are absolutely self-explaining. And you just need to add 5, 6 inputs and that's it. And then you're already connected to this tool. You send over your request and you get back the answer. And then you can streamline the answer to the next node.
When we talk about the topic of scalability and accessibility, so obviously we talked about the engineers, like people like ourselves, Tobias. But what about the non-technical people? What about the accessibility on technical versus the non-technical level?
Yeah. So, as with every algorithm, the idea at the end is to share it within the company. And in Synera, we developed a product which is called Synera Run. And this is pretty awesome because you just need to have a one-time setup. So you need to create a server within your company, within your infrastructure. And then now the people who are creating this workflow, they do a single click. And with the single click, the workflow will be sent to the server. Nice interface automatically will be generated. And now everybody who has access to the workflow, so there's some kind of administration behind it, and who has access to the server can now connect and use this workflow via Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. So you just get a link, you open it, and that means you could do also, for example, your engineering task on your iPad. So it doesn't matter anymore. So just imagine coming back to RFQ, you're a sales engineer sitting at a customer is giving you some specs, you open your workflow on the iPad, putting in some inputs, continue this discussion for 5 or 10 minutes, and then showing your customer already the results and some price indication. I think this would really create a lot of trust, and also your customer will be super surprised, I'm convinced.
Absolutely. Feels like the future is already today. But talking about the future, like let's say in 3 to 5 years down the road, I mean, even earlier, there will be the topic of AI agents. Obviously, it's like very trendy. Even Google released a white paper on that topic recently. So how do you see the future of RFQ automation or automation in general happening in the next maybe 1 to 3 year timeline?
Yeah. So till some months ago, I had a lot of concerns about AI in engineering. So, I mean, AI is a really huge word and you can use it for a lot of different things. So, especially we talked a lot about simulation today. I think it's pretty nice for forecasting your simulation results. And then instead of having 8-hour simulation, getting some predictions in 2 seconds. But I was never seeing that an AI system is really replacing a whole engineer. Why? Because I was always thinking using, for example, tools like Midjourney, where you can create AI pictures. So I did very often a test. I was thinking about a picture I want to have, then just inputting or creating the prompt. And all the time I received a nice picture. I always loved it, but it was never what I had in mind before. And that was the reason why I was always a little bit critical if this large language model approach could help in engineering. But now with the shift we see with the agents, I think the game will totally change. Why? Because I can now combine different worlds pretty easy with each other. So if we see it now in context of our automation, just imagine instead of having this huge end-to-end automation where you just input something and then you get a result, this is always what we have in mind when we talk about automation, but it comes with a lot of challenges because you need to understand and you need to know all your edge cases up front. And you need to handle these edge cases in your algorithm. But now with the agents, you don't need this huge workflow. You just need a small snippets of different workflows or different automation. And now you can build an agent system on top. So just imagine you have an organization with managers, with engineers, you have a management agent, and this person receives the RFQ. This agent looks into the RFQ, splits it to different departments. There you have the department leads. They split tasks to different engineers. And then the engineers or engineering agents decide, okay, what kind of workflow snippets I need to use, which workflow snippets I need to put in a row. And they can automatically iterate through it. If there is some kind of trade-off or a decision needs to be made because the spec can't be fulfilled, then they report it back to the manager agent. They decide on how to move forward. And with that process, you can avoid to have a lot of meetings. You need to wait for the next meeting with the manager. So you just put in your requirements. All these agents start running, sometimes in parallel, sometimes more serial. And after 2 minutes, 5 minutes, you already get a result. So this will be not only in RFQ, but generally in engineering, I believe, a total game changer. And the nice thing is, even if there is a lot of experimental stuff still ongoing, but it's already there. So you can already generate very high quality engineering tasks today with this kind of systems.
I would fully agree. Maybe last question to you, Tobias, is how can companies get started using this automation approach today?
So different answers. So first of all, you need to understand what things make sense to automate. So if every engineering task follows a totally different process and totally different clicks, it doesn't make sense to automate them. But if you're, for example, again, a tier one and you always have similar products and they always follow the exactly same process, then you start to look into it. Okay, what are the parts which are the most time consuming? Maybe also the tasks which have the most repetitive tasks. And then you can start to automate it. And you can do it in different ways. So you can choose a standard programming language like Python, or you choose, for example, low-code platforms like Synera, where every engineer without coding skills can then pretty easy, after 1, 2, 3 days onboarding, can start to automate the first tasks. So I just can recommend everybody out there just reaching out to Synera. If you want, reach out to me and I can consult here a little bit to find the right use cases to start with the automation.
Excellent. I'll put every relevant link to also contact Tobias in the description, so you can check that out as well. And we even have a webinar on RFQ process if you want to delve a little bit deeper into workflows. Tobias, thank you so much for today's deep dive into RFQ. And maybe we have a second part in the future on AI agents. Who knows?
We should do, Joseph. Thank you for having me again. It was, again, a lot of fun and pleasure was on my side.
Thanks a lot.